In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, the Galactic Federation had ruled for over 10,000 years with what they called peaceful cooperation. Roughly translated, this meant that everyone did exactly what the Federation wanted, where they got their planets turned into elegant cosmic dust clouds. It was all very civilized and diplomatic, with only the occasional genocide to keep things running smoothly. Earth had joined this illustrious club just 18 standard months ago. Humans were still figuring out which fork to use at galactic dinner parties and how to pronounce names with consonants that sounded like someone gargling mouthwash while playing the kazoo. The Federation viewed humans as cute, primitive creatures who had only recently stopped pointing spears at the sky whenever a spacecraft entered their atmosphere. That is, cute until they weren't. The trouble began during what should have been a routine diplomatic visit to Earth's first off-world colony on Mars. High Commander Glixor of the Zentari Dominion, a species with skin like polished obsidian and a personality to match, was touring the educational facilities with 8-year-old Timmy Jackson serving as his pint-sized guide. "And this is where we learn about the stars," Timmy explained, his gap-toothed smile radiating pure enthusiasm as he pointed to the classroom's holographic display. High Commander Glixor, whose species considered children to be simply undeveloped resources, glanced at his chronometer. "Fascinating. Your primitive understanding of celestial mechanics is quaint." What happened next would be debated for centuries. Some say Timmy sneezed. Others claim he simply tripped. Whatever the cause, the result was the same. Timmy accidentally stepped on Glixor's ceremonial robe, tearing the sacred Zentari symbol of authority. In Zentari culture, this was the equivalent of declaring war, spitting on their ancestors, and criticizing their cooking all at once. With reflexes honed by centuries of military training, Glixor deployed his personal defense mechanism, a neural disruptor that was standard issue for all high-ranking Zentari officials. Timmy Jackson died instantly, his small body crumpling to the floor before the horrified eyes of his classmates and teachers. The galaxy collectively shrugged. "Regrettable, but hardly noteworthy," stated Ambassador Phlox of the Ursa Minor Confederation during an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. "Children perish all the time. The Zentari have offered to clone you a replacement. Most generous, considering the inferior genetic material they'd be working with." Earth's representatives sat in stunned silence as one alien diplomat after another expressed bland condolences, followed by suggestions to move past this unfortunate incident. The Galactic Federation had seen planets destroyed, species enslaved, and entire civilizations reduced to historical footnotes. What was one human child in the grand scheme of things? The phrase "it happens" was repeated in 17 different languages. They really should have known better. The emergency United Nations session that followed broke several records. It was the shortest in history, lasting exactly 8 minutes and 43 seconds. It was the first time in UN history that a resolution passed with unanimous support, no abstentions and zero debate. And it was the first time the official minutes included the phrase "screw these alien bastards sideways with a rusty chainsaw," attributed to the normally reserved Swedish delegate. The resolution was simple. Earth was going to war against the entire Galactic Federation. When news of this declaration reached the Federation Council, the initial response was amusement. The Grand Patriarch of the Andromeda Alliance nearly choked on his nutrient paste, laughing. "The humans wish to wage war? Against us? Against the combined might of 10,000 civilizations, each of which could sterilize their planet from orbit. Perhaps they misunderstand the scale of power they face," offered Ambassador Xeet of the Silicon Consciousness, their glowing photoreceptors blinking in what passed for confusion among their kind. What the Federation didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for this moment since they first discovered they weren't alone in the universe. Behind the smiles and handshakes and earnest attempts to learn alien cultural norms, humanity had been studying, analyzing, and planning. just in case. While the Federation laughed, Earth moved with single-minded purpose. International rivalries were set aside, military resources were pooled, and Admiral Victoria Knox was unanimously chosen to lead humanity's forces. Knox was a legend even before the war began. Standing 6'2" with iron-gray haircut in a severe military style, she had a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by an artist who specialized in expressions of controlled rage. She'd led Earth forces in the water wars of the 2030s and had a reputation for tactical brilliance paired with an absolute refusal to accept defeat. They killed a child, she told the assembled military leaders of Earth, her voice calm but her eyes burning with cold fury. They killed him and then told us to get over it. They think we'll fall in line like every other species they've bullied for the past 10 millennia. They think we're weak. She paused, looking at each person in the room. We're going to show them what humanity does when pushed too far. We're going to show them why every horror movie alien in our fiction comes to Earth and loses. We're not just fighting for Timmy Jackson. We're fighting because if we don't, they'll never respect us. And next time it will be a school or a city or a continent. Across the galaxy, the Federation's diplomatic corps tried to contain what they viewed as a minor situation. The Zentari offered reparations, a generous payment of rare minerals valued at 16 million credits. When this was rejected, they increased the offer to include technology transfers and special trading rights. Earth's response was to recall all its citizens from Federation space and seal its borders. The humans are throwing a tantrum, High Commander Glixor informed the Federation Security Council. They'll calm down eventually. All primitive species go through this phase of irrational emotional response. Their limited lifespans make them value individual lives disproportionately. The Galactic News Network ran stories with headlines like Earth isolation, self-harm, or strategic retreat. And human war declaration, cultural misunderstanding, or mass delusion. No one was particularly worried. After all, what could one tiny planet possibly do against the might of the Galactic Federation? They were about to find out. The first indication that the Federation had catastrophically misjudged the situation came exactly 3 weeks after Timmy Jackson's death. High Commander Glixor was enjoying a relaxing vapor bath in his private chambers on the Zentari homeworld when every electronic system on the planet simultaneously failed. Life support, defense grids, communication networks, everything went dark at precisely the same moment. In the sudden silence, something unprecedented happened. It began to rain on the Zentari homeworld. Not the natural precipitation that occasionally graced their arid planet, but thousands of small, crudely made paper boats, each bearing the image of a smiling Timmy Jackson and the words "I was 8 years old." Across 17 key Federation worlds, the same scenario played out. Critical systems failed, paper boats fell from the sky, and in the ensuing panic and confusion, Earth struck. The attack was led by Lieutenant Rex Hardcastle, a burly man with a magnificent mustache and a brain that military psychologists had described as terrifyingly creative. Hardcastle had spent the past year studying Federation defense technology and had discovered something that the Federation's 10,000 years of unchallenged superiority had caused them to miss. They've got fancy quantum shields and hyperdimensional barriers, Hardcastle had explained to Admiral Knox. But they haven't had to defend against plain old kinetic weapons in so long they've forgotten they need to. Which is how the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy found themselves under attack by what amounted to very sophisticated rocks. Hardcastle's pebble droppers, as the human forces called them, were simple tungsten rods dropped from ships in orbit. No explosive payload, no advanced guidance systems, just good old-fashioned gravity and mass, accelerated to devastating speeds. The result was catastrophic for the Federation's carefully constructed military installations. shields designed to disperse energy weapons did nothing against solid objects moving at terminal velocity. It was like bringing a lightsaber to a mud fight. Status report, Admiral Knox demanded as the first wave of attacks concluded. 17 strategic targets neutralized, Lieutenant Hardcastle replied, twirling his mustache with undisguised glee. Minimal casualties as ordered. We hit military installations during off hours. But we've crippled their response capability in 3 quadrants. The Federation Council convened an emergency session, no longer laughing. How did they bypass our defenses? Demanded the Regellian Chancellor, his tentacles writhing in agitation. They used primitive weapons, a military advisor admitted, the words clearly painful to utter. It's impossible, shouted Ambassador Floxx. The humans are barely space capable. They still use combustion engines on their own planet. That's just it, the advisor replied. They're not using advanced technology. They're using rocks, very fast, very precisely aimed rocks. Across the galaxy, Federation military strategists scrambled to adapt to a threat they hadn't faced in millennia. Meanwhile, Hardcastle's forces continued their campaign of targeted strikes, always avoiding civilian casualties but systematically dismantling the Federation's military infrastructure. We're not monsters, Hardcastle told his troops before each mission. We're just very, very angry parents. The Federation, which had expected either a futile diplomatic protest or perhaps a symbolic attack on a minor outpost, was completely unprepared for humanity's methodical, precise campaign of destruction. For the first time in recorded history, the mighty Galactic Federation found itself on the defensive. And they didn't like it one bit. 3 Federation weeks into what humans were now calling the Timmy War, Ambassador Zorn Quillax was dispatched to Earth with the unenviable task of negotiating peace. Quillax was the Federation's most experienced diplomat, a tall, willowy being with silver skin that rippled with iridescent patterns when he spoke a biological feature his species had evolved specifically for diplomacy. Quillax arrived at Earth's orbital diplomatic station expecting to find desperate humans eager to end a war they couldn't possibly win. Instead, he found Lieutenant Mira Velasquez waiting for him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Velasquez was Earth's newly appointed diplomatic specialist, a title that made several Federation species nervously shed their outer membranes when they heard it. With her perfectly pressed uniform, immaculate posture, and the kind of smile customer service representatives use when telling you why your warranty claim has been denied, but Velasquez was humanity's secret weapon in psychological warfare. Ambassador Quillax, she greeted him, her voice warm but her eyes cold as the vacuum of space. Welcome to Earth space. Would you care for some refreshments before we begin? We have an excellent selection of beverages prepared according to Xylorian digestive specifications. Quillax, thrown off by the unexpected hospitality, accepted a glass of something blue and fizzy. I come bearing generous terms from the Galactic Federation, he began, his skin rippling with what his species considered to be an irresistibly persuasive pattern. How thoughtful, Velasquez replied, still smiling that terrifying smile. Before we discuss those, I've prepared a short presentation. It's only about 4 hours long. What followed was what Federation historians would later call the Great Guilt Tripping. Velasquez's presentation began with a detailed biography of Timmy Jackson, his favorite foods, pizza with extra cheese, his hobbies, collecting interesting rocks and building model spaceships, his dream of becoming the first human ambassador to the Andromeda Galaxy. She showed videos of Timmy's parents receiving the news of his death. She played recordings of his little sister asking when Timmy was coming home. She presented testimony from child psychologists about the trauma experienced by Timmy's classmates who witnessed his death. And then, most devastatingly, she showed pictures drawn by children across Earth, thousands of them all depicting Timmy among the stars, with messages like "We won't forget you and Earth remembers." By hour 3, Quillax's silver skin had turned a dull gray, and he was making a sound that his translator couldn't quite process but seemed suspiciously like sniffling. "Now," Velasquez said finally, her voice still professionally pleasant, "you mentioned something about terms?" Quillax, emotionally devastated, pushed forward a data pad with the Federation's offer: immediate cessation of hostilities, a formal apology from the Zentari, and reparations amounting to 50 billion credits. Velasquez examined it for precisely 5 seconds before sliding it back across the table. "I'm afraid this is insufficient," she said, her tone suggesting she was declining an invitation to a mildly uninteresting party rather than rejecting terms to end an interstellar war. "Insufficient." Quillax's skin flashed patterns of disbelief and alarm. "This is the most generous settlement package the Federation has ever offered to anyone." "Yes, and it's quite thoughtful," Velasquez acknowledged with a nod. "But you see, we're not interested in credits or apologies." She leaned forward slightly. "We want justice. And until we get it, we'll continue to dismantle your military infrastructure piece by piece." But this is madness," Quillax protested. "You cannot hope to defeat the entire Federation." "Oh, we don't need to defeat the entire Federation," Velasquez replied, her smile never wavering. "We just need to make it too expensive economically, militarily, and psychologically for you to continue opposing us. And based on Lieutenant Hardcastle's reports, we're making excellent progress." As Quillax left the meeting, visibly shaken, Velasquez called after him, "Oh, and Ambassador, we've prepared a small gift for you to take back to the Federation Council." The small gift was a holographic projection device containing personal messages from 10,000 Earth children, each asking why the Federation didn't think Timmy's life mattered. When Quillax presented his report to the Federation Council, the 3 council members had to excuse themselves to their evacuation chambers, the closest their species had to crying in the bathroom. The diplomatic offensive had begun, and humanity was playing the long game. As the war entered its 2nd month, the Federation found itself in an unprecedented position. They were losing. Not in terms of resources or military capability, they still vastly outmatched Earth in those categories, but in morale, public opinion, and strategic initiative. Human forces continued their precision strikes against military targets while scrupulously avoiding civilian casualties. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Velasquez's diplomatic corps flooded Federation communication channels with stories about Timmy Jackson, about Earth's children, and about humanity's determination to protect its own. The Federation's citizens, many of whom had never questioned the actions of their government in 10,000 years of existence, began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why exactly had a Federation official killed a child? Why was the Federation at war with the species that, until recently, had been welcomed as new members? And most disturbing of all, what if humans were right? It was time for humanity to deploy its ultimate weapon. Admiral Knox personally oversaw the implementation of Project Lullaby. "This is either going to end the war," she told her staff, "or make the Federation so angry they'll finally unleash their full military might against us. Either way, we'll know where we stand." Project Lullaby was, at its core, a sophisticated psychological weapon based on the most powerful force humans had ever encountered: a parent's love for their child. Earth hackers infiltrated the Federation's vast media network and simultaneously broadcast a simple message to every screen, holographic projector, then neural interface across thousands of worlds. The message showed Timmy Jackson on his last birthday, blowing out candles on a cake shaped like a spaceship, surrounded by his family. It showed him playing with his little sister. It showed him proudly wearing his school uniform on his first day as a colonial student on Mars. And then it showed High Commander Glixor activating his neural disruptor, again and again and again, as Timmy fell to the ground in what appeared to be endless, looping agony. The broadcast couldn't be stopped. Federation tech experts found themselves facing security protocols they'd never encountered before, based on mathematical principles so archaic they'd been forgotten for millennia. Its prime numbers, one Federation scientist realized with horror. They're using encryption based on prime numbers. We abandoned that approach 8,000 years ago because it was too simplistic. Across the galaxy, Federation citizens watched as the truth of what had happened was laid bare. The message ended with a simple statement: "This is why Earth fights. This is why we will not stop." In the Zentari capital, Admiral Knox's forces executed a precision strike that breached the planetary defense grid just long enough to extract High Commander Glixor from his heavily fortified compound. The operation took exactly 7 minutes from start to finish, with 0 casualties on either side. Glixor found himself transported to Earth's orbital diplomatic station, face to face with Admiral Knox herself. "You," he snarled, his obsidian skin gleaming under the station's lights. "Do you realize what you've done? The Federation will obliterate your planet for this insult." Knox regarded him with the calm detachment of someone observing a particularly uninteresting insect. "They won't," she replied. "Because right now, 10 billion Federation citizens are watching what you did to Timmy Jackson. They're questioning everything they've been told about humans, and they're waiting to see what happens next." She leaned forward slightly. "What happens next, Commander Glixor, is justice." The trial was broadcast across Federation space. It was brief, fair, and adhered meticulously to Zentari legal procedures. High Commander Glixor was found guilty of the negligent death of a sentient being, a capital crime under Zentari law, though one that had never before been applied to the death of a non-Zentari. His sentence, permanent exile to Earth's Mars colony, where he would spend the remainder of his life teaching Zentari language and culture to human children, under the watchful eyes of Timmy Jackson's parents. As Knox had predicted, the Federation didn't retaliate. Instead, the Federation Council convened an emergency session and voted for the first time in its 10,000-year history to censure one of its founding species. The Zentari representative was removed from the council, and a formal apology was issued to Earth. The Federation had blinked first. The war officially ended 97 Earth days after it began. The peace treaty, drafted primarily by Lieutenant Velasquez, contained just 3 provisions. First, the establishment of the Timmy Jackson Protocol, requiring all Federation species to undergo cultural sensitivity training with a special focus on the value of children's lives across different species. Second, the creation of a permanent human seat on the Federation Security Council, with veto power over any military action against emerging civilizations. Third, the construction of a memorial to Timmy Jackson on every Federation capital world, with an inscription reading, "He was 8 years old." We remember. When Admiral Knox returned to Earth, she was greeted as a hero. Offered prestigious positions in government and military, she declined them all, choosing instead to establish the Earth Defense Academy, dedicated to training the next generation of human representatives to the galaxy. "We didn't win because we were stronger or more advanced," she told the first class of cadets. "We won because we refused to accept that might makes right. We won because we fought not for conquest or power, but for justice and for the simple proposition that every life, even the life of one small boy, matters." Lieutenant Hardcastle retired from active service and, in a move that surprised everyone, opened a diplomatic school specializing in cross-species communication. His first student was High Commander Glixor, who approached his sentence with the grim determination his species was known for. Lieutenant Velasquez became Earth's first ambassador to the Federation Council. At her swearing-in ceremony, she wore a small pin depicting a paper boat, a reminder of how the war began and why it had been necessary. As for the galaxy at large, attitudes toward humans underwent a seismic shift. Federation species that had dismissed humans as primitive and emotional now studied Earth's history and culture with newfound respect and more than a little apprehension. "They're insane," one Regellian scholar concluded after studying Earth's military history. "They will sacrifice everything to protect a single child. They will wage war against impossible odds. They will use outdated technology in ways we never imagined. And they will do it all while being unfailingly polite." A popular saying emerged in diplomatic circles across the Federation. In a negotiation, hope for Andorians, prepare for Zentari, but pray you never face humans with a cause. And on Mars Colony, at the site where Timmy Jackson had fallen, a simple playground was built. Children from 17 species now play there, under a sign that reads, "Remember Timmy. Remember why we fought. Remember why we made peace." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Don't mess with the crazy apes from Earth. They take things personally.